Welcome to Healthy Babies, hosted by the Shaw Center for Children and Families. And happy May, everyone. Today, we're excited to be joined by Jamila Alkattan, a birth doula and community health worker with Beacon Community Impact. Jamila has been a valued part of the Healthy Babies Coalition for several years, bringing compassion, knowledge, and deep commitment to the families she serves. Most recently, she expanded her expertise through additional training in South Africa, further enriching the perspective she brings to her work. Today, Jamila will be sharing with us on the topic of strengthening support, a doula's perspective. We're grateful to have her here and look forward to learning from insights and experiences she has had. All right. And Jamila, with that, I will go ahead and I will turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you. What's today? Wednesday? Thursday.
Thursday.
Okay, let me not set us back a day. Happy Thursday, everyone. Friday Junior. I'm so happy to be here. I think I know everyone's name that I'm seeing. And so how you said, I'm a doula. My name is Mila. I have been a doula for about 5 years, and I currently work for Beacon Community Impact as a hospital-based doula. In February, I had the beautiful opportunity and the chance to go to South Africa to explore a little bit of what birth culture is like over there. I didn't get to do any like hands-on doula work, but I learned a lot from different groups of elders, midwives, and healers about Indigenous birth work. And some things. So I did put a presentation together, which I needed to do anyway for my for my department and team that I said I was gonna do. Um, just a little bit about my experience and some of the things from each of the elder groups that we met with that they believed in as far as preconception, pregnancy, and postpartum. But I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen really quickly. To present. Can y'all see my screen good? Okay. So like I said, I'm Mila. I currently work for BCI. I traveled to South Africa in February of 2026. I would say that journey altogether was a beautiful journey. And it started with my community supporting me. I did not have to pay any money to get to South Africa, although it cost the tuition fee. My community members, doctors, nurses, community health workers, people in the meetings that I see every day, every month. They, contributed a piece, even if it was $5, $10 here and there. And so I was very blessed and grateful to be able to not have to spend any money and be supported for this trip. And so a little bit about the organization that I went with. It's called Wombs of the World. It's a non-for-profit that basically focuses on like doula trainings. So they offer different trainings in different countries. Some of them are only like, you just learn and see what, meet different elders, meet midwives, and then they do practice actual doula work in places like Tanzania, and Mexico. And so for this trip, which was it was really unique. They partnered with a midwife healer organization in South Africa named Africa Ikilafe. And the midwife who is the owner and the founder of this organization is the one that navigated us through our 2-week trip in South Africa. And so this was the first group of doulas that Africa Ikilafe had an opportunity to work with. Usually they would work with midwives for a week and a half and initiate them as midwife healers. So this was the first time that Africa Ikilafe had an opportunity to bring doulas into this perspective of birth work. I think was a very beautiful thing as well. I put the organizations on here in case anybody wanted to, screenshot and just see or look, because both of them offer a lot of trainings about maternal health and birth work. So it could be beneficial. So I'm not going to read all of this. This just talks about the midwife that I met with. I would say the thing that stood out to me the most, obviously, she was an amazing leader, amazing midwife. She climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and she told us the story about that. So I thought that was amazing. This little old frail looking lady
Mhm.
who's, just she does a lot of lines of work, a lot of birth work, she's an author, she's a healer. But just seeing her, also hearing her talk about her challenges climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, and all I could think was like, what will my Mount Kilimanjaro moment be as a doula? And so, just a little bit too before I go forward, doula is a birth support professional that just for those who don't know, I know Heidi knows. I'm not sure. I can't see who's all on here today, but just I like to say an emotional support person for women in labor. So we do a lot of pregnancy education with moms. Traditionally doulas will meet with moms beforehand and go to their birth and be on call for their birth specifically. I work in a capacity of being hospital based, so I'm here certain days, certain times between Memorial and Elkhart General. And I support the women who are here when I get here. And now we have a bigger team. So we started with two people. We went down to one doula for a while. Now we have a team of four. We were granted a hospital, thank you, a hospital-based grant that they were like, I think community could run this, and it gives us potential to expand our doula program. So they kind of trusted me with that. And so that is currently the project that I'm working on as a doula, is getting my doulas, my team of doulas mentored and trained, and they're also on this call too. So if anybody has any questions or even see them out in the community, just know that we are hospital-based doulas for Beacon. So I tried to pull some things that directly correlated. Like I said, like this was a midwife leading doula. So like a lot of things that we talked about, we kind of built on some of these things. So we started, of course, with like what is our understanding and perspective of birth and colonization of birth. And so the midwife had us in a room, and we talked about, what did birth look like to us before, hospital systems came into play, before doctors became doctors, when there were no, actual medical buildings built in our villages and in our area and stuff like that. And so the doulas, I went on a trip with 11 other doulas from across the US, and all of us went and talked about our perspective through dance, through art. Some people drew things, some people sang songs, some people narrated, different things. So it was, just beautiful to see and hear how people saw or thought of what birth looked like before colonization and Westernization. So we definitely discussed that, and understanding the effects of the apartheid. South Africa went through a lot with their apartheid, and it still is like, weighing on them today as a country. And a lot of the things that I came across, I would almost feel like, oh, this is almost deja vu, because we're dealing with these things too. And it would be, people being pushed out of their homes, and the gentrification factor that we are currently also dealing with too. So, we talked about that. We also, of course, discussed our time. Like I said, we were there for 2 weeks, so we were in a city for a little bit, and we stayed in very, very nice, beautiful places. But when we did the workshops with our elders and the midwives, we went into their villages and talked to them at their homes and stuff like that. So one of the next places that we went was called Naledi Farms, and the things that we talked about when we were there. So I'll just start with like Naledi Farms is an amazing organization. If anybody ever travels to South Africa, they are are a gardening and farming organization that they built their home in a land that was pure. They found a land that they wanted to go back to. They were pushed out of this land, and they came back to it. And when they got an opportunity to come back, fact, they built a home, and not only did they make their home on the land that they wanted, but they also were able to make it into a business where they can teach people how to harvest, and they can teach people how to farm, and then also using the things that they harvest and teaching them how to cook those things. And then they shared their space with us for the midwife to do the workshops there, and they also cooked for us from their garden. So I thought that was very beautiful because they also kind of just showed like, the different vegetables, the different ways to cook these different foods and the nutrients that these foods brought. They gave us a tour of their whole land and kind of explained this, like how do you know if air is pure? Like these are the different types of plants, aloe plants, how do you, if you see all of these growing in one place, we saw some uh I'm what's it we saw plants that were becoming distinct. Is that extinct? There we go. Thank you. Plants that were, native to just South Africa, and that, they were saying like people take these for hotels and like stuff like that for decorations and stuff, but they are coming extinct. And we know that plants and natural things that grow from the earth are there for our health and wellness naturally. That's why God put them there, if you believe in that, and I do believe in that. And so we, we left the land, offering for the land, just thanking the land that we were on. I feel like this is where we kind of started a lot of our opening spiritually, for sure. As a doula, we kind of started with talking about maternal lineage and who came before us. It was important for us as birth workers to kind of just know, like, who, accepting those who came before us, knowing who our ancestors are, because it kind of helps us with our own strength of who we are today and how we got to who we are today. And then also our ancestors are the ones that's steady pushing us along in this work that we're doing when it's hard, and we might not know it and we might not always acknowledge it. But there, are angels that are surrounding us on a daily basis that sometimes we might need the extra push, and they're there for us. And so we talked about how important it is not only to know who your ancestors are, but to know who your mother is and your grandmother and where they came from, so that, as you're walking and you're giving and pouring into other people, you can authentically do so for yourself. And then also acknowledging the wounds that we carry from trauma that was not ours. I thought that was a really great opening spiritually for that. And a lot of people can benefit from that. I came back home and kind of took that as a note to start learning more about my ancestors and my people before me. So then we, of course, talked about the transition as well, from, what birth looked like when we were having births at home to now we're transitioning into the hospital, and how traumatic that is, and how over time, things have evolved with hospital systems, things have evolved with evidence-based care, things have evolved with birth workers and doulas. There was a time where midwives and doulas and birth workers were casted out because they were seen to be, they were looked at as witches, because once evidence-based care started coming into play, they were like, well, if I know the evidence, then how would you know this? So you must be a witch. Now you're bewitched. And so a lot of midwives and birth workers then were shut out once colonization started to come and evolve more over time. Luckily, we've started to find our ground bases running back, where it kind of started back with Black women being granny midwives and feeding other people's babies and taking care of other people's babies. And that evolved into more natural, holistic midwife care. And then now, doulas, of course. And then, of course, how we show up in these spaces. We had a lot of lengthy discussion of, like, when we're in these spaces that have caused systematic trauma, where we're bearing witness to the systematic trauma, how do we show up then as a birth worker? How do you show up for yourself? How do you show up for the people that you're there to support? So I'm gonna try in 30 minutes, Heidi. I'm gonna try. I did my best of trying to take from each portion of like elders and midwives, and that we like the things that were the most tangible, or the things that like stuck with me the most for the most part. So one of the next villages that we went is a place called Kagomo. Kagomo is the land of cows. This land was native to people who spoke Botswana and Tetswana. So this was the home of the midwife who led us. This is where she was from. Her mother, was one of the first birthing assistants at their first clinic in the village there in Kagoma, Kagoma. And so, of course, that kind of full circle back around to like who you are, it passes on as well. You can take the things that it goes on your family lineage and you can run with them, or you could go in another direction. And they kind of showed us like, the midwife who was guiding us went in the same direction her mom went into with birthwork. We discussed things like understanding importance of tradition and ceremony and family and community. The biggest thing overall is community. Having community, having a village, having your people there to uplift you and support you, which we'll talk a little bit more about too. But understanding the importance of tradition, and how, when you have your own family, you can build your own traditions and it might look different than what your mom did, or you can keep the same tradition and you can continue to follow those on. One of I found it interesting that in like most African architect that they have these circular spaces. And so in Africa they say like the circle it means like the beginning to no end. And so in a lot of African architect, they have spaces to where they can come and sit and just meet as a community, as a village, and they can eat and they can talk. Or if you're a healer, they might have spaces where, as a healer, this is my office, this is where I do all my healing at. And so particularly for when we were in the land of the cows, we did a ceremony where they had a circular, almost like it looked like a fire pit, but it was like a stone wall that was circular, and that's where they would put pieces of their ancestors. So like pieces that from their home or like a picture or whatever. And so we did a ceremony that they would normally do to call and thank the ancestors, and also kind of just channel them through us as we're going. So it was very intense. Another thing that we did on this land was we talked about placental burial traditions and ceremonies. So we found a place on the land where we took a placenta and we found it between the connection of two trees and we built it. And she kind of explained to us that in African culture, if you bury your placenta with the womb, so the womb of a placenta is the part that's attached to you. And so if you bury it with the womb to the ground and the sac, which is the amniotic sac, is where what your baby is in, so that would be facing up. That would indicate that you do want another child, depending on how you put the sac. So you can flip the sac inside if you want a girl, or you can flip it outside of the placenta if you want a boy. That's some of their beliefs. Or if you don't want a child, you would flip it over that the womb is upside. So that was some of the spiritual tradition, the ceremonies that they did, as far as like placental burial, which we kind of see placental burial throughout the whole time that we're there. They didn't do things like eat their placenta, they didn't encapsulate them, they just buried them. So this is like I was saying, like the circular space. So this was at the Naledi farm space. So like we could all sit here and then they would cook on the fire pit. But then on the other side of this, they had other fire pits where they could also cook other like food sides so that we don't have to get up. We can just sit here. We could cook all in one space. We could eat all in one space and we can just love on each other all in one space. I thought this was one of my favorite. I love to see this. If I ever build my own home, I will have a space like this. So the next place that we went was Limpopo, is a province. And so the people, the elders and the midwives there, they spoke Soto and Sapiri. And the midwife that guided us, like one of the richest things about Africa is that they know more than one language. On top of knowing proper English, they know like at least two or three other dialects of African. And so I thought that was a very rich thing about their land. But some of their beliefs about preconception, pregnancy, and labor were like, in preconception or in pregnancy, they measure to know if you were pregnant. If you missed your period, they will ask you how many moons between your last period that you had, to measure how far along you might be. Um, herbs were utilized throughout the whole all of the elders that we met with. Herbs were a big thing. Some of the elders were more so kept the herbs in secrecy just to protect the things that they had. But even when they did share, which some of them did share some of the herbs with us, but when they did share them, it was not things that we were familiar with or even grown in our area of the world. And a lot of it would come from mountains that were by their homes as healers. And so I did do a little, back work of finding out like what are some pregnancy herbs and preconception herbs and stuff like that that could help with preconception, pregnancy, and labor. Obviously, there's very limited evidence on herbs and if they work. And so I'm just kind of doing more research about that and what is native to us in America and what I can, contribute. I think the biggest one, and a lot of people know about like red raspberry leaf tea, is something that most pregnant women in pregnancy, birth, and postpartum can utilize that whole time. Even when you're having periods, it's supposed to help with your period cramps. And so that is one of the more traditional herbs that we use for pregnancy and labor and postpartum. They utilize like the use of heat in general, to stimulate blood flow. In pregnancy, you always want to keep your blood flowing and stimulated, especially when you're in labor and having your baby. You want to keep that blood flow going in your stomach so that you can continue having contractions and your baby can move down. So they would use warm hands and utilize hand massages to also help rotate baby into the proper positions when it's time for baby to come. And if you don't know, a baby should be head down when it's time. Head down and face down. So the face should be facing down, but sometimes babies are face up when they're, early labor, which is also okay because babies have to do a lot of rotating when they're in the pelvis. Some spiritual beliefs in pregnancy was like everything should be unknotted. So like tying things, my shoes, I shouldn't have shoelaces tied. I shouldn't have like if I have a robe, keep it unknotted. Another thing is instead of the act of tearing something, it needs to be cut. So instead of tearing paper, I need to cut it with scissors. It's just a belief that it could cause placental obstruction if you do these things in pregnancy. And again, these are just from this group of midwives. This wasn't the beliefs of all of the groups of elders that we met with. They didn't really use a lot of pain management things to help with labor pain. This set of elders, this particular set was a little more so of like, this is what we're supposed to be doing, so we shouldn't be complaining about it. Which the midwife was kind of like, I don't really work like that, but this is just how they are. They were a little less, I put in here like a little less sympathetic, a little bit of labor and like the pains that we bear as women. In this group, which we'll see a difference in the other group, they invite women of reproductive age to witness birth because there might be birth workers in that lineage, or just to be aware of the process that they may have to experience or go through. And then another thing that kind of came up multiple times was feeding women like warm soup or porridge in a bowl right after birth. And that kind of the warm heat stimulates the body, again, stimulating that blood flow, but also they would use the bowl for a multi-purpose. They would put it on the mom's chest to stimulate blood flow for milk production. And then they would also put it on the mom's stomach to stimulate it for the uterus can clamp back down together and go back to the normal size after birth. So I thought that was really cool because again, we see that throughout that was like congruent throughout all of the healers that we met with. The next tribe that we met with was the Mojaji tribe. So this day we were really supposed to go meet with a lady called the Rain Queen. So this is her ancestral line that instead, because the Rain Queen did not get to meet us, they opened up their home and they cooked for us. By the way, all of the elders cooked for us, and that was my favorite part of the whole trip. Hands down, all of the homemade cooked food. It was amazing. It was nourishing. It seemed like it was healthy and just grow. Like I came back home and I was having rashes on my face and I was like, I think it's from the food that I was eating once I came back home. Like I started breaking out real bad. But I will say like all of their food, amazing, 10 out of 10. But so the Mojaji people, They spoke Setswana and Sotho. So interesting thing about the Rain Queen in the Mojaji ancestral line is that they are one of the only queenships that is recognized by the government in South Africa. And so that I thought that was amazing. They dressed like queens. They all had their tribal, wear on with their different colors on. But some of their beliefs were, birth. And this one, birth was never done alone. There was always two to three elders surrounding, plus the midwife, is something that was also congruent throughout the whole thing. And that's why one of the, a foreign concept to them was postpartum depression. So when we brought up postpartum depression, they were like, if our moms are experiencing this, we don't know, because we're there all the time, or they're just not telling us. But we're there to support the mom throughout the whole time, from pregnancy, birth, and it's not just the midwife, it's the elders, it's your mom, it's your grandma, it's everybody, which is also a difference that I see with America and in other countries is that like America sometimes we shut people out. Like I know for me, I'm always like, I think I want to be alone, but also going on this trip, it made me realize the power of having that support and having that energy in that space, which is such a sacred space, could result in a very beautiful birth outcome. Um, Again, the circle was is the beginning to no end, which was something that she was saying. Mashilo is the midwife that guided us. Some elders expressed that birth tradition and like holistic traditions is being lost. The youth don't have a lot of interest in keeping these things alive, such as like they do the elders did these things called family praises. So like when we went into the 93-year-old midwife's house, when they danced for us, they danced all around us, and then the midwife's mom, who's 93, comes out and she does their family. She's like yelling and, doing their family praise. And a family praise is like, I came from this person. I'm the daughter of this person. I'm the daughter of, this person. And so kind of just inviting your ancestors into those space, and then also, giving thanks and praise and gratitude to those who did come before you and that you're walking in the footsteps of. So, those are some of the traditions that they were saying were being lost. The umbilical cord cutting, and this was another one that I found congruent, was that sometimes they would find a stone in a specific stone that they said that they would sharpen and they would sterilize the stone. They would also use herbs to cover it for disinfectant purposes as well. And they would use that to cut the umbilical cord. Um, in this group, they believe that when you bury your placenta on one, depending on what you have, if you have a boy or a girl, that's where you will bury it at your home. So if you have a girl, then you will bury it on the left side of your home, and if you have a boy, you will bury it on the right side of your home. Another thing that this group had believed is wherever the placenta burial spot is, say if later down the road you're not able to get in touch with your child, you can go to that burial spot and call out for your child, and they would just have a sudden urge to come back home. I thought that was pretty cool.
Mhm.
Um, um, so this group believed that if you as so before we heard that they allow younger women to bear witness to birth, but this group believed that it could possibly be harmful for different people and energy that is young to be in birth spaces. So if you didn't have a lineage of midwives that came before you, then they wouldn't invite you into this space. But if you did, you would normally witness birth by the age of 7 or 9. But if you didn't, it was believed that, you could always have like, later on in life, you could have the same father of the baby or something like that, that there were other spiritual beliefs that came behind that will result in harm of a birth if you witnessed a birth as a woman. Um, and then in postpartum, this was another thing that was congruent. The mom usually stays isolated for 2 to 3 months, with no interventions except for like mental and physical support, that they would come feed the mom, but she would stay isolated with the baby for 2 to 3 months in the hut or her room or whatever space that she is in. And usually they would put, I don't know if it was this one or another one, but they would put like a sign or a log or a certain would like certain piece of a tree outside of the door to signify that there is a mom and a baby in this room and to not disturb. And like I said, they were ignorant to the thought of postpartum depression due to working in village, having that family dynamic, having support consistently and having, people there to, wait on you. And so in some, like with the elders before this, they were kind of like, the mom works up the whole until the whole time of pregnancy. With these elders and the next healers, they're kind of like, well, we, wait on mom. The mom of the mom takes care of the mom the whole pregnancy. Of course, the birthing and pregnant mom would do what she wants, but the mom will always be there to support her throughout the whole pregnancy and postpartum. Um, I believe for these ones also, what time is it? Three. Am I overtime? Oh my gosh. Okay, cool. So yeah, these are the other things. Again, a lot of this definitely went over into all of some of them were congruent and some of them were different. Herbs was a really a big thing. The last group was just traditional healers and faith health practitioners. So they were initiated healers where they would do divination, spiritual offerings and things like that. But we got a lot out of all of the different groups that I was with. And then here's just some extra pictures and videos of it.
Thank you so much, Jamila. It's so fascinating to learn about other cultures. We will stay on the video for a little bit and anybody here can ask questions, but for the purpose of the recording, we're going to go ahead and say thank you for coming in to YouTube and watching the video, and any of those questions will be attached to the transcript with the video. So